They continued west for 5 hours. As mid-morning neared, they reached the brown waters of the Nyeri Ko River. Both men were parched, and even with the gritty silt, the taste of the fresh-flowing water was a godsend. They slurped from cupped hands until their bellies were full. Adam walked into the trees to relieve himself. When his bladder was empty, he headed back toward the riverbank. He pulled up short before he could break out of the tree line. Francois stood at the river's edge, his cutlass drawn. 3 men on horseback stood before him. Adam quietly slid his rifle off his shoulder. He opened the bolt and checked the chamber. The brass of a fresh round shone up at him. He ran it close silently, set the butt to his shoulder, and switched the safety off, taking a bead on the chest of the man at the front of the riders. Francois held his ground. Adam heard the lead man yell something in Wolof. When he raised his Schneider Enfield to fire, Adam pulled the trigger. The bullet caught the man just under the armpit, spinning through heart and lungs. His body wrenched to the side, his trigger finger spasmed, and the Schneider Enfield fired blind, striking Francois just below the ribs. The horses spooked at the rifle fire. The man Adam mortally wounded dropped his rifle as his horse reared and threw him backward. He landed on his head. His neck broke cleanly with an audible crack. Francois clutched his side and ran for the woods, energy leaving his body as he ran. He made it 5 steps before he sagged and fell on the sandy shore. The other 2 horsemen raised their rifles, but the panicking horse infected its comrades, and the men fought to rein them back in. Adam fired again. The shot struck the nearest rider in the face. He went limp and slumped in the saddle. All tension gone from the reins, his horse bolted. The dead man tumbled free, landing face down in the water at the river's eddying edge. The last man wheeled and charged away, following the riderless horses at a gallop. Adam ran to Francois. He dropped to the sand beside him and lay prone, taking careful aim at the vanishing rider. He squeezed the trigger. The time the bullet took from the ignition's report to striking the man's spine was measured in milliseconds. It went straight through the center vertebrae. His back arched in spasm, his head rocked backwards, his hands lost hold of his rifle and reins. He was paralyzed from the neck down before he hit the ground. The horseman died on the river's edge over the course of hours, frozen in a hellish stasis, baking as the sun rose higher and higher, while his blood trickled, slow but insistent, from the small hole in his back. He lay there, a prisoner in his own body, while his mind screamed and mourned for all he was losing and had lost. It took all day, but as the sun set, he finally, mercifully, bled to death. Adam rose and ran to Francois. There was an exit wound just above his kidney. He rolled the big man onto his side and inspected the entry hole. Francois gasped in pain. The wound in his belly was small, but blood was flowing steadily from it, soaking his shirt. "Well, you've gone and gotten yourself shot, Sergeant." Francois gritted his teeth and nodded. "Can you apply pressure to it? Or are you going to pass out?" Francois nodded. "Oui, I can. I'm going to pull you into the shade. I want to try for a couple of those horses. If they've stopped running, I'll bring a pair back, all right? I promise I won't leave you." Adam squatted behind Francois and wrapped his hands under his armpits. Then he dragged him across the sand into the trees. He laid him on his side, pulled off his keepy cap, and tore the cloth flap from the back of it. He spread it so it covered the bloody entry and exit holes. "This is as clean a bandage as we've got. hold it tight to the wounds. Francois placed one hand on his belly and another on his lower back. I will return soon, Adam said. He ran and picked up his rifle and followed the hoof prints north. His belly was riled by the adrenaline of the killings, and he fought an impulse that shot up out of nowhere to lay down and sleep. He knew if he expected to survive the day, much less the week or more it would take to reach Tambacounda, he had to have a horse. It took the better part of half an hour to find them, lazily drinking water from the river, content they had found freedom from the men who kicked their flanks and yanked their bridles and bits. Adam slung his rifle and approached the nearest horse slowly. One big, dark brown eye gazed at him from behind long lashes. Come, beauty. You and I are going to be near and dear, chérie. I will take you back to Dakar, and you will live the rest of your days like a king. Oui? Adam reached out slowly and touched the warm bristles of hair on the horse's jaw. The dappled stallion snorted through his nose, but made no sudden movement. Adam caressed the jawline and face, then gently took the reins. He ran his other hand down the mane and rested it on the saddle horn. Now, mon ami, I'm going to sit upon you, oui? And you are going to save my very life. Adam lifted his foot into a stirrup, then mounted. He guided the stallion in a circle, then rode him at a walk to the closest charger. He leaned down and reached for its reins, but before he could grab them, the horse kicked out toward its fellow. Adam held fast to the saddle as his own stallion reared and lashed out with its own hooves. The other horses bolted, and Adam felt his mount enraged, balking at having a rider aboard him while his brethren ran free. As the horse began to drop to its knees to roll him off and crush him beneath it, Adam swung his foot free of the stirrup and yanked hard on the reins. The stallion's side hit the ground as it tried to roll. Adam's leg barely escaped being broken under the saddle, but he was an experienced horseman. He kept his right foot in the stirrup and pulled the bridle firmly. As the stallion followed his lead, he rode it back up to standing, quickly turning the horse and kicking its flanks, pressing it firmly back into service. He looked to where the other horses had vanished and cursed his luck. There was no time to waste in pursuit. The men hunting them were likely growing closer by the minute. With a kick, he drove the stallion back along the river to Francois. Adam tied up the horse, then tore Francois's tunic into strips. He flushed the wound with river water, then bandaged the cloth tightly around Francois's belly. He helped Francois onto the saddle, then climbed on in front of him. They forded the muddy river, pressing west, feeling their pursuers behind them, hoping to gain as much ground as possible before their trail was discovered. On the third miserable day, the summer monsoon began. It did not cease. Any trail they had left vanished in the downpour. The men pursuing on horseback gave up, turning back east to their tribal lands, basking in the arrogance of their victory over the French colonials and their serfs, unaware they had signed death warrants for every member of their tribe. Adam fashioned a lean-to and left Francois sheltered from the downpour while he searched out the tubers and roots that Francois described to him to stave off starvation. When he returned, they choked down the raw vegetables and drank handfuls of fresh rainwater that was soaking them to the bone. Adam felt the heat of fever emanating out of Francois. At least we will not die of dehydration, said Adam. Francois smiled, grim. Oui, but I fear my cutlass will rust into nothingness. His skin had taken on a decidedly grey cast as the wounding continued taking its toll, trying to end his life. Where did you get it? Asked Adam. The cutlass. My father's father. Is it French? No. Portuguese, said Francois. Slavers. Francois patted the pommel. Oui. The Portuguese slaver who owned this was killed with it. And now it has passed down through the generations to me. Had my father's father not killed him, my own father would have been born in chains in the Americas. Then it is a righteous weapon. The idea of it is. But a weapon is only as righteous as the man who wields it. That's wisdom. Francois took another sip of water. He closed his eyes. Do not think I can ride on. Adam looked at Francois's ashen face. Nonsense. You've made it this far. If you are not dead yet, I don't believe you would die. The wound will not close in the wet. It will weep and remain open. If it is not already infected, it will become so, Francois replied. Adam was silent. You should ride on to Tambacounda, said Francois. No. It would take me 3 days to get there and another to get back if they would send a train. 3 more if I return on horseback. I think you would definitely be dead by then. If I am not, you will have a doctor with you and food and spare horses. Go. Adam gathered more roots and broad leaves to catch rainwater. He gave them to Francois, then he mounted the stallion. Before he spurred him, he looked back at Francois's muddy boots poking out of the lean-to. He knew that in a week's time, the muddy boots would be in the same position, but the man wearing them would be bloated and rotting, likely opened and eaten in stages by the forest's predators and scavengers. Adam dismounted. He tied the stallion to a tall acacia where it could graze and water at its own content. Then he crawled back into the lean-to. What are you doing? Asked Francois. You must go. Oui, I should, but I will not. We'll stay here until your wound closes and your fever breaks. Then we'll ride for Tambacounda together. He left unsaid the alternative. Francois's fever would likely prove fatal, and then he could leave him, his conscience clear. As night and rain fell, Francois and Adam slept, leaning against each other in the shelter. It took 2 days for the fever to finally break, and another 2 for the wound to seal itself. It may be that those were the 4 days it took them to fall in love, or perhaps those 4 days allowed them both to accept what was, and though neither spoke of it, when they remounted the horse and continued on to Tambacounda, the relationship had been forged. It was more real than anything either man would encounter again in their lives. After Adam's court-martial, he was stripped of rank and sent back to France, his future placed in his father's hands. He wrote Francois weekly, and Francois replied as often as he could. As Adam had supposed, his father, Field Marshal Paul Gillet, paid the price politically for his son's disgrace. When the Germans struck their first blow in 1914, he saw an opportunity for redemption. Adam was given a command and sent to the front to stem the German tide while earning his father political currency. When Adam was killed in the early days of trench warfare, A letter, held in trust by his commanding officer, was sent to Dakar, where it reached Francois. When Francois read it, his heart broke. He deserted his post and booked passage to France. He joined the Légion étrangère and sought a path to revenge Adam's death. Francois served with honor, taking his first vengeance on Germany alongside Renoir and Isaiah. It would take him 2 years to find Field Marshal Paul Gillet. When he did, he could not stop himself. He cut him down in his command tent brutally, then made his escape back to the front. On Good Friday, he traded a French field marshal's head, along with a sandbag full of German ones, for British strawberry jam. Yet the vengeance had no satisfaction in it. The emptiness inside Francois remained, a vacuum created by Adam's loss, a blank, painful void. Adam opened his eyes and was back inside of Matthias Nilsson's body in the Sainte Marguerite bell tower. Francois stared down at the man who was and was not Adam that sat before him. The Portuguese cutlass felt as heavy as one of the long steel rails he had guarded toward Kulikoro and the Niger River. "How are you here?" Francois asked. Adam's bitter laugh tumbled out of Matthias's mouth. "I don't know. I only know why." "Then why?" Adam lingered on his memories for a breath, then he spoke. "She sent me to kill you." Caitlin touched Francois's back gently. "What's happening?" Inside, Francois wanted to burst out laughing. It was, in truth, the most obvious question in the world, but the answers it elicited were laughable at best, insanity at worst. "Je ne sais pas. I do not know," he said. Caitlin looked at Matthias's corpse sitting in the snow. "This is the dead man you said was here," she whispered. Francois nodded. "The one you said, if you kill it, we can shelter here." Francois nodded again, numb, the cutlass heavy in his hand. He did not have the strength to swing it. For the first time, Adam Matthias looked past Francois at Caitlin and Adolphe. When he saw Adolphe, his brow furrowed. "I know you," Adam said in French. When Adolphe did not respond, he repeated it in German. "I know you." "No," Adolphe said. "I don't think so. I was in the 18th Bavarians. I don't know you." "No. I know you from the roadhouse, in the desert. You were there, blindfolded," Adam said. Adolphe shook his head. "I don't know you. I've never been to any desert. You're a dead man. You don't know me." "Yes, I do." Adolphe ripped the shotgun out of Caitlin's hands and shoved her aside. She hit the stone parapet and fell. Adolphe racked the slide and aimed Isaiah's shotgun at Adam's head. He pulled the trigger. Click! The hammer fell on the empty chamber. Francois's hand shot out and grabbed the shotgun barrel. He twisted hard, wrenching it out of Adolphe's hands. Adolphe stumbled back, hands rising to ward off the strike from Francois's cutlass that he knew was coming. When it did not, Adolphe opened his eyes and kept backing away. "What is wrong with you?" Francois shouted, but Adolphe did not understand. "Stop him," said Adam. Francois hesitated. Adolphe turned and ran to the ladder, nearly tumbling through the black rectangular hole, but he managed to set his feet in the rungs and disappear into it. They heard his boots hit the landing, then the sound of him fumbling down the stairs in the dark echoed up to them. Adam stood as Francois turned back toward him. "What are you doing?" Francois asked. "I saw him. He was blindfolded, but I'm sure it was him," Adam said. "Where?" "I don't know where it is. Perhaps nowhere, perhaps hell. But I know I saw him there, and I know he must be killed. The big man sent him to murder you."
"Francois, what's happening?"
Caitlin asked, lost in the flurries of French. "He says we must kill the German," Francois replied.
"Francois, you're taking for truth the words of a man we both can say for sure is a dead man. A man you told me an hour past you were certain was aiming to kill you."
Is not who he seems," Francois replied. From the stairwell they heard the door below slam open and Adolphe's footfalls echoing away into the church proper.
"Francois, I'm not staying here alone with this one, and there's nothing waiting for us outside this church other than death and snow. Let the German go."
Adam saw Francois's hesitation. He approached slowly, as he had the stallion, by the Nierico River. Francois turned toward him. Adam reached out and touched Francois's shoulder. "Stay here. I'll get him," he said. He moved past Francois and dropped down the ladder, disappearing into the blackness as if venturing into a deep, dark well. Francois felt the touch on his shoulder even after Adam had gone. He handed Caitlin her shotgun. Then he knelt down and wept.